10 years before the outbreak of the Clone War, Jango Fett would travel to Dooku's castle on the moon of Kolma to finalize his deal with the Sith Lord to become the prime clone for the army to be built and raised upon Kamino. Dooku considered Jango to be the perfect candidate for the project he and Sidious were creating. However, the bounty hunter's demand for an unaltered clone surprised Dooku, not knowing Jango to be the sentimental type who wished to be a father. But Dooku should have known better, knowing much of the backstory of Jango Fett and his history with the True Mandalorians. And as Dooku would learn, it was this history that would form the real reason why Jango Fett wanted an unaltered clone from the Kaminoans as part of his deal to become the army's genetic template. In this video expose, we'll see how Jango Fett's life and connection to the True Mandalorians resulted in his request for an unaltered clone and the creation of Boba Fett. Still only a young boy growing up on the planet of Concord Dawn, Jango Fett would be caught up in the civil war that broke out between Jaster Mareel's True Mandalorians, who were committed to a moral standard and worked as high-paid soldiers, and Vizsla's Death Watch, a Mandalorian splinter faction that saw their destiny as conquerors of the galaxy. With the Death Watch in pursuit upon Concord Dawn, Jaster and the other True Mandalorians fled into a field to hide and regroup. Days later, the Death Watch would find a family named the Fetts, demanding information on the location of the True Mandalorians and its leader. When Jango's father refused to turn over Jaster, Vizsla threatened to kill Jango, resulting in Jango's mother appearing and killing one of the Death Watch. Shocked, Jango's father told his son to run, with the boy escaping into the fields as far away as he could, eventually coming face to face with Jaster and the True Mandalorians. As Jaster correctly told Jango his family was dead, Jango helped the True Mandalorians escape through an irrigation tube, allowing them to plan an ambush on the Death Watch as they returned to the closest town with the help of Jango. The True Mandalorians succeeded in surprising Vizsla, resulting in the death of the entire force of Death Watch warriors. As Vizsla attempted to deal with Jango himself, the boy grabbed his blaster, turned, and fired a bolt into the chest of the Death Watch leader. With that, Jango was adopted by Jaster, and the True Mandalorians left Concord Dawn. Roughly 6 years later, Jango would rise through the ranks of the True Mandalorians, being granted his own squad to lead as commander. Jango prepared for what was supposed to be a simple mission on the interim planet of Corda 6 against poorly armed and trained resistance fighters. But it soon became clear that the minimal resistance expected was just the opposite. As Jaster called for a full retreat and that the mission be aborted, a true Mando named Montross refused, attacking a heavily defended ridge. Although the attack failed, the diversion was used by Jango. However, as Jango was closing in on their target, they were ambushed by members of the revived Death Watch, revealing the entire mission was a setup. While Jango was pinned down, Jaster too was ambushed by Vizsla, who survived the confrontation 6 years earlier. Even worse, Jaster was betrayed by Montross due to Jaster's favoritism shown to his adopted son. With Jaster surrounded and with no escape, the leader was shot numerous times, with Jango unable to do anything but watch from afar. With their leader dead, Montross ordered the True Mandalorians to abort the mission. But Jango had another idea. He wanted to first get Jaster off the planet and then find Vizsla. With that, although Vizsla escaped, the True Mandalorians rallied around Jango, and despite his age, he followed in Jaster's footsteps to become their new leader. As the leader of the True Mandalorians, roughly 12 years before the Battle of Geonosis, Jango would accept another mission that appeared to be a simple one, assisting the governor of Galadron to put down a planetary insurrection. However, Jango knew the governor was also funding Death Watch, helping them rebuild. And when Jango attempted to get information about the scheme, Jango was again ambushed by Vizsla and the Death Watch. While Jango retreated, the Death Watch had another far worse plan in place for the True Mandalorians. The governor had previously contacted the Jedi Order, begging for their help against the True Mandalorians, framing their efforts against the insurrection as a brutal, unfounded slaughter of civilians. As the Jedi strike team, led by Jedi Master Dooku, descended upon the True Mandalorian camp, the resulting confrontation was a disaster for Jango. He was the only Mandalorian survivor of the Battle of Galadron, and after years of attempts, Vizsla's rivals were annihilated. Even better for Vizsla, Jango was turned over to the governor and sold into slavery. However, Jango was able to escape from his captivity when a transport he was traveling on was raided by pirates, allowing Jango to travel back to Galadron to obtain his Mandalorian armor and force the governor to provide the location of Vizsla and Death Watch. Now knowing they were headed for Corellia, Jango located the Death Watch vessel, shooting his way into the bridge and going straight for Vizsla. As Vizsla attempted to escape, knowing the attack on the bridge left the ship dangerously close to be destroyed, Jango was able to catch up, pushing both of them into an escape pod that set off for the surface of Corellia as the ship exploded behind them. As the two Mandalorians exited the escape pod, they engaged in a brutal confrontation. Although Vizsla was certain he emerged victorious after revealing he poisoned Jango, Jango slashed at Vizsla's midsection, not attempting to kill the Death Watch leader, but drawn the surrounding dire cats of Corellia through the scent of Vizsla's blood. This not only worked, but resulted in the death of Vizsla. Jango would regain consciousness the next day, choosing to begin a new life as a bounty hunter, ultimately bringing him face to face with Dooku on Kolma. But although Jango would become one of the best bounty hunters in the galaxy, his attachment to the True Mandalorians never truly went away, despite his apparent walking away from everything connected to his past. It would be the Sith plot against the Jedi and Republic and the offer to become the Prime Clone that would finally grant Jango the chance to continue the legacy of Jaster. When Dooku was surprised to hear that Jango wanted an unaltered clone as part of his acceptance of the offer, falsely believing the bounty hunter simply wanted a son to raise, Jango corrected him immediately. As Dooku just learned the entire history of Jango, the bounty hunter informed the Sith Lord he wasn't looking for a son, but an apprentice, one who would carry on the legacy of Jaster and the True Mandalorians, just as he once attempted to do. Therefore, Jango hoped Boba would rise to again lead the True Mandalorians, adopting the principles that Jaster instilled within the faction and within Jango. Interestingly enough, it wouldn't be the unaltered clone Boba Fett who would rebuild these traditions, but a clone trooper named Spar, who formed the Mandalorian Protectors in the image of the True Mandalorians. The Mandalorian Protectors would adopt the moral and ethical standards of the True Mandalorians, and even the guidelines for behavior outlined by Jaster himself within his writing, the Super Commando Codex. However, Boba Fett would himself eventually rise to the leadership of the Mandalorian Protectors, over 50 years after Jango made his decision to obtain an unaltered clone for such a purpose on Kolma. So there we have it, the real motivations and history behind Jango's desire for an unaltered clone. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions. Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. Or perhaps follow us on Twitter at SW Reading Club for updates regarding the channel. Or support the channel through Patreon for access to exclusive rewards and discussions. If not for me... For boy, that's a lot of ambushes.